We have got a special treat for you today. We have a lot we're going to talk about, but we're going to talk about purpose and your profession and how those cross over. Do they cross over? Is your work your purpose? Is your purpose your work? We have Joseph Laudon today. He's a consultant, he's a coach. Joseph, welcome. I'm so glad to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
He's also a dad. He's of three kids, homeschool kids. He's a husband. He's got his own business. And so he's got a lot of experience. And so we're going to talk a little bit about all those things today. But so, Joseph, tell me a little bit about, and those who will watch, a little bit about you and how you ended up right here today.
So right here today, anytime I talk to somebody, I tell them I can't give you my story unless I tell you about God,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be here. I'm not even meaning like where I'm at. I mean probably not here on earth anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and the story to get here involves God in every single part of it. In my business, in the coaching, in my family, and me and my wife homeschooling the kids. Everything is about God, and it ties directly into purpose. But I served 4 years in the Navy as an aviation structure mechanic. I got out of the military. Actually lost my house. My wife and I and our kiddos, our two girls at the time, we hadn't had our son yet. We went through homelessness, losing the house, things like that. Worked in
That's
aviation for a
tough.
couple years. Yep, and pivoted to. I actually managed a cattle ranch for a while, and then I transitioned into tech in 2019, and I have been in tech since then. Started off as a ServiceNow technical consultant, implementing ServiceNow. It's a platform as a service software, so it can take any part of the business, and we implement that software. And the whole purpose of it is one platform for your business. So find the financial department, the customer service department, the IT department, all on one platform, so they're not siloed business units. Along that journey, I had a conversation with God in 2018. I said, Lord, I just want to help people. Um, and I don't care if it makes any money. I just want to serve. And I felt like I had a thought come through my head, well, just do it then. And that's when the coaching side started for me. And Another Navy veteran named Jeremy Anderson, him and I started something called the Veterans Roundtable, and that was dedicated to transitioning service members and their families, because he and
Mm.
I both understood the struggles of transitioning out of the military, going through the identity crisis, learning everything about being back in the workforce again after service being the number one thing you're focused on.
Yeah.
And we grew that to about 200 volunteers, and it got so big, and we never planned on it becoming so big that it almost got too much to handle for everyone involved.
Mm.
So we took all the members and referred them to nonprofits and things like that so they could continue to serve. And Jeremy took a step back to serve his family, and I continued working individually one on one with transitioning service members, military spouses. I've expanded it from there to come all who are weary, and I'm here to try to help and always direct them back to God, because I feel like, again, I can't tell you my story. I can't give you insight and guidance without talking about God, because that's where it
Yeah.
all starts from.
So you have twofold. You have career coaching, and that's with individuals as well as businesses. And so you
Hmm.
help them have their technical thumbprint, so to speak. So they're
Hmm.
they're staying. I mean, in the world that's required of, you're helping them know how to do that and effectively. But yet at the same time, and I'm sure some of this comes from not just the military, but being homeless, helping people, and you don't charge people for your coaching because you feel like God has given you your work as your provision so that you can then take what you've learned and help people. So that's a pretty massive undertaking. So what does a day-to-day look like? You're in business for yourself. How does that play out on a calendar? Because that's a pretty balanced approach to getting all that done.
So again, the most important meeting that I have is the one with God. If I don't have that one, the whole rest of the day is a mess because I would say
All
about
right, so
three.
hold on right there. Hold on right there. So what does
Yep.
that look like? You have a wife, you have 3 kids, you're from home, you homeschool them. How do you do that?
Get up early or get them started, and then help with breakfast, everything like that. And then I come up, and before my hands touch a keyboard, I spend time with God.
Gotcha.
Because I'm at the point now, and I tell people this all the time. I'm so far past what I ever thought I could become or do that this is all God at this point, and without His direction and leadership, I can't do any of it.
Yeah.
So that's the number one aspect. Day to day, it changes. So that's the thing about consulting that I do on the technical side is it's constant flexibility. I can look at my calendar on a Friday and try to plan out the next week and say I have this many calls on Monday, this many calls on Tuesday, and it can change at any given moment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where grace comes in. That's what having a wonderful, incredible wife I call Wonder Woman, because she constantly adjusts. We're constantly adjusting to each other. And then what I really try to do is set boundaries. Boundaries are something really important to me. And I've heard some of the other folks that have come on talk about the ability to say no. I have to say
Yeah.
no to a lot of things, even
Mm-hmm.
things that are things that I want personally to do. I have to say no to them again because it's constantly going back to God and saying, "Hey, what are your thoughts on this?" and bringing
Mm-hmm.
it to Him before I make a decision. And then any decision that's made, if it has to be something that's spur of the moment, it's does this glorify God? If not, I'm not going to do it. And
Yeah.
I've turned down work, I've turned down relationships, anything, because what I'm doing in my mind is all for the glory of God. And if it doesn't benefit Him or the kingdom or His church, it's worthless to me.
Yeah.
So day to day, it is a struggle. Something me and my wife really try to work on is meeting throughout the day if we can, just conversations to constantly adjust. And then the kids again are have been great throughout all of it. The important thing to understand too is that from being homeless, we went from Jacksonville, Florida, to Augusta, Georgia, to Maryland, to Blairsville, Georgia, to back to Jacksonville within 6 years. So my kids and my wife and I are used to constant change. It's
Mm-hmm.
so we're so used to it now that it's almost strange when it's not happening because it's
Yeah.
being led by the Spirit instead of our desires and our wants.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about work. I was on the phone with a lady this morning who had left a job due to really poor leadership, abusive leadership, and then she was taking care of herself because it was affecting her health,
Hmm.
and she had been in this job for 2.5 years, um, and really did a great job. So then she had five. She quit because it was affecting her health to the point that she was in ERs. So she quit. She had 5 interviews. She's accepted another job. So there's a lot of transition in the workplace right now. Um, and it's like I told her, people like her that have a great resume, they've got a lot of stability. I mean, she had a great track record at her business, or are gonna find a job because she's got a lot to offer. What do you say to someone who they're looking at the workforce now and they don't know what to do, but they know they need to do something? How do you get your priorities right, that you're not jumping on a wrong job just to get a job, but you're trusting God at the same time? Because that's a double whammy, and it's so important to get God first. So
Yep.
explain how you help people through that process.
Yep. Yep. So part of that comes from my own experience of doing exactly that many times, multiple times. And the rest comes from other experience. But first, always first, before you make any decision, you go to God in prayer and you humble yourself before the King, because we are supposed to be spirit led. We're supposed to be God led. And
Yeah.
that posture of humbleness before you make a decision is the key,
Yeah.
because you have to understand that although it seems like it's a decision that you're making alone, you're not. And having the resume, having all of that stuff in order is important. But like you said, you can still, everything can look good and feel good to you. But until you have the direction from Christ and you've humbled yourself to say, Lord, you know, lead me. Is this the right decision? Even when the interview comes, even if the interview goes well, still go to Christ, and you still
Mm-hmm.
have to humble yourself each and every time. It's not say one prayer and go through the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is, again, we haven't got to talk about it yet, but the identity side and understanding your value. It's not tied to your resume or your experience or anything. It's tied to the fact of who God is, and having the confidence to say, God, I know the situation that I'm in is not a good one. Is it something that you are allowing me to go through to build endurance and to mature me and show me my reliance on you? Or is it something that I need to leave? And
Yeah.
I made that same prayer in 2017 when I left the cattle ranch. And it was a very hard one to make because had been homeless. We had a property on the ranch that we were able to live in, and leaving that meant not only no pay, it meant nowhere to live. And I prayed
Yeah.
that same prayer to God, and he said, again, in my thoughts, the only reason you're still here is because you think I won't take care of you. And it shook me to my core. And I told my wife, I said, we have to leave. There's no other choice. We can't focus on what's going to happen a week from now, a month from now. God told me we have to move. Well, we have to move because the only thing keeping us here in this bad situation is our fear. So a lot of times I say that, and it's not the answer people are looking for. They're looking for a step-by-step answer. And I'm said, let's focus on the first one first. And he will give you the other ones. And my job as a coach isn't to tell you what to do. It's to point you in the right direction and then guide you along the way. But
Mm-hmm.
it's from a biblical standpoint. It's not I know everything and I'm going to tell you exactly what to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's to teach you. And the
Yeah.
same way Jesus taught us how we're supposed to live, my whole goal is to point them to Christ and be there to guide them here and there when they need it, and speak truth into them and help them get through the mindset blocks and things like that so many of us have. Um, but it always starts with that. And if
So
you have
let's
that resume and stuff, it's great.
Yeah. So let's talk about one of the things you help people with is the imposter syndrome. People don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And I like to say, if you know who you are, you'll always know what to do next. But, you were Joseph before you were married, before you had 3 kids, before you went through into the military and all that. I was Beth before all that. So there's a person that is your core person. And I think so many people lose themselves in the roles they play. So what does it look like to come out of and recognize if you're in it, the imposter zone or
Yeah. Imposter phenomenon. Yep. It's so this is another part of the testimony for me that is mind blowing. I went by Garrett Loudon for the majority of my life. That's my middle name. When I left the military, I went by Joseph to just be right on the resume. I didn't know what to do, so I went by my first name. At that same time is when God came in. My relationship with Christ became real, and the Joseph now and who Garrett was is two different people. So I
mm-hmm,
went through that identity crisis, that imposter syndrome of now I'm a new creation according to the Bible, and I have to act accordingly.
right?
Um, and imposter syndrome, a lot of times for me, has always been it's just you stepping out of your comfort zone. You're stepping into something else,
Mm-hmm,
especially if you go from not knowing Christ, not having a relationship with Christ, not being saved, then being saved. You're not who you were before. You're new, so you're going to have to learn a lot of things that you didn't know before. So there is a lot of that fear, right? But
mm-hmm,
for me, it always goes back again to your identity in Christ. And working through imposter syndrome is me constantly reminding myself that my value isn't tied to my output. I don't have a
mm-hmm,
faith of my salvation isn't required by my work. It's required
mm-hmm,
by Jesus Christ's death on the cross, right? And if I will walk with Christ the way I'm supposed to, the Holy Spirit produce the fruit through me. Now, when it comes to work, it's very much the same thing, which is Your imposter syndrome is you going from one identity to another and understanding that. And there is a time period in between the middle where it is very scary. It is very fearful. And if you focus only on your current capacity instead of looking at your internal identity, it can be very overwhelming. And when it comes to trying to do that separately, I don't have a lot of tips for you, because for me, again, there is no other way.
Yeah.
Your identity, when it comes down to it, is that you are a child of Christ, and my strength, my joy, your strength, your joy comes from Him. It's not based off circumstance. Because if it was, for anybody that's been through a lot, then you could easily say that, it makes it the fear so real and almost consuming. And I was in that cycle for so long. But that imposter syndrome is constantly understanding that it's just a comfort zone change. You're just going through change. And just like the first time you got on a bicycle when you were a kid and you were scared to death, and your parents or whoever was there to help you would explain to you, it's just practice. It's just over practice and over and over and over. And many of us, I feel like when we give our lives to Christ, we feel like imposters in the very beginning too, because it's all so new and we think we have to get everything right, and we forget about the grace part, and we forget that in our weakness, Christ is stronger. And the more we humble ourselves and submit ourselves, the more that He can produce the fruit that we desire. So it's very much a internal conversation. And
Plus,
lead, yeah.
you have to do the work to renew
Hmm.
your mind. The
Yep.
as my pastor says it, God saves your heart in an instant, but you renew your mind every day of your life and from here till heaven. So you have to reconvince yourself
Yep.
of who you are, because that imposter syndrome is constant, and so you have to base who you are based on who God says you are, not who you think you are, who you used to be, or who someone else says you are. So that's
Yep.
so true. But we have to really tell ourselves what the Bible says about us, because otherwise we're sunk.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to start living by your manual, and that's what the
Yeah.
Bible is. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And
Yeah.
I think one of the best ways to do that is they're called the I ams. You can look them up on on Google,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I am, and then repeat them back and forth to yourself. The world is giving you so much programming throughout the
Yeah.
day that you
Mm-hmm.
have to program your mind and renew it, exactly like you're saying, Beth.
Yeah. So let's talk about self-sabotaging. So I know that's another topic, and we see people do that. People make decisions in a moment that's going to affect the rest of their life, and they don't, they don't know that. And one of the things that I do in helping people coaching is you protect your path. You have to protect your path. You're heading in a direction, and while things come at you, um, you have to protect your path. And so often, the big mistakes, the big seasons in the wilderness are self sabotaging from stupid decisions. So, how do you keep yourselves from doing that very thing of sabotaging your own relationship with others, Christ, work, all that? Because so much of it is self imposed.
Yep. So I think we touched on it with the renewing of your mind, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that the Jesus called us little children for a reason, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding that a child without their parents isn't going to get very far. They're not going to
Mm-hmm.
survive for very long. But we're
Right.
adults and we have this level of pride that says, "Oh, I can do this by myself and I don't need anybody." I was a perfect example of it. This
Mm-hmm.
self-sabotaging behavior, this imposter syndrome, all of these things were things that I did for over a decade until I went through therapy and I gave my life to Christ, and still have to work on it. It's still, if there is a day and a moment that I'm not living in within the will of Christ and asking for discernment constantly, it's very easy for me to self-sabotage, because we go back to what the flesh tells us to do, or
Mm-hmm.
what the internet says or what a friend says. And it's a constant balance of speaking to the Holy Spirit throughout your day, every
Mm-hmm.
single day, constantly when things come through, and then having people around you that you can get discernment from. And that's one of the greatest things that I've ever done personally, was get myself around people that I can trust,
Yeah.
godly people godly men and women that are not afraid to speak to me, speak at me, and say, hey, let's be careful here. Hey, have you prayed about this?
Yeah.
Because again, for me, I can catch it so fast when I've messed up. And I mean,
Yeah.
it happens all the time. And it's just grace and constantly reaffirming back to Christ how much you need him.
Yeah.
That's the best way to get through self-sabotage. And then the other side of it is just, again, reaffirming who you are, and renewing your mind each day. You can't do it. It's called your daily bread for a reason. I was just talking to my kids about this morning. I said, we're eating breakfast. We're filling up our physical body. I said, but if we don't sit here and read the word and spend time with Christ, we're spiritually hungry. And then we go throughout an entire day being spiritually hungry and then wonder, man, why did the day turn out this way? Why did we make these mistakes? Because
Yeah.
you're not being led. You're stepping outside of that and trying to perform. And that's not how that works.
And it's the same thing that if you're hungry, spiritually, soul hungry, if you're physically hungry and you eat junk, you're going to remain hungry because your body hasn't received the sustenance and the nutrition that it needs. Yeah. So you're overworking your body trying to find something that's going to satisfy when that is a self-sabotage in itself. So I think that's important to recognize when your soul is hungry, which leads to purpose. So let's talk about purpose. And everybody wants to know, oh my gosh, what should I do? That's the big question I get a lot. Oh, what should I do? But, I go back to, okay, we're not human doings, we're human beings. So you have to go back to who you are so that you'll then know what to do. Because if you know who you are, you'll know what to do. So address that a little bit, because I think people get that a little bit backwards. We want to do, and we think that our accomplishments are of the things that we have checked off and we've become, and we've, oh, I've got this title, I got this promotion. Those are all good, but the true satisfaction comes from knowing that you're doing with your life something that is great and wonderful, and you're adding value to other people. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I think it's important that obviously we have to do things, but we have to know how to do things from a perspective of, I know who I am. And that's kind of what we've talked about a little bit, right?
Yep, absolutely. And that is, if I could put it all in one sentence, everything that you said, and make it somebody's testimony, that would be mine. And I mean, it was for over a decade, I didn't know who I was. And all I ever knew my whole life is I wanted to help people. I was a caretaker my whole life. It's always been, I just need to take care of people. I need to help people. Right. But there was never any farther than that, not in the actual, well, what am I going to do with it? I just knew that I was supposed to help people. Right. And then once I gave my life to Christ and went through therapy, I realized, purpose for me is very much to take everything that I've learned, take my testimony, and turn it into testimonials for Christ. Right. And I can do that in anything that I do throughout my day. Doesn't matter. I can do it on a street corner. I can do it in a corporate office. I can do it in the church. I can do it wherever. Right. So that's my overarching purpose. And then I take that purpose even farther and break it down more. So also I'm a father, so it's my job, and a husband. It's my job to provide. Right. So to provide provision on that front, for me, it's what allows me to do that in a capacity to where, in my mind, money is a tool. If I make more money, it's more I can serve with, and that's how I've always lived with my mindset. And me being able to work from home allows me to be here with my wife and my children and make sure they are being raised up in the way they should go according to the Bible. But if you don't know who you are, that's the first step. Any coaching client I've ever had, it's always starts with, who are they? Do they know who they are? And if they know who they are, then we take purpose from there. But your purpose doesn't necessarily have to be your job, right? It can be an offset, because you can still fulfill your purpose in your job. But for me, in my mind, coaching is something that is my purpose. And it's not the word coaching, it's making disciples. And there's ways that I do that. People are in need a lot of times on the job seeking side of things. That allows me to step in and say, I can help you find a job. But not only that, when we're done, you're not going to have just a job. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
have a relationship with Christ. If that's your decision,
Mm-hmm.
but I tie the two together because my purpose isn't to just get you a job. All right. I want to see you saved and fulfilling your purpose, eternal purpose, not your temporary. And I think so
Mm-hmm.
many times we focus on temporary purposes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very difficult. I've been there. I know what it's like to say, hey, right now all I can focus on is just making sure my kids have food to eat. And again, it goes back to having that personal relationship with Christ and saying, you know, come all who are weary, and I will give them rest. Cast all your worries upon me. I casted my worries at
Mm-hmm.
my time. But at the same time, I would cast the worry to him, and then I would get back to work, helping other
Yeah.
people find work or helping
Yeah.
other people instead of focusing just so much on me. And I think that's the problem that we get into many times is we're so focused on ourself. The Bible says we are to love God and love our neighbor and to make disciples. None of
Mm-hmm.
their
Love
no
our
no
neighbor as ourself, though.
yeah,
We do
yeah,
get to love ourselves. We got to
yes,
take care of
yes.
ourselves.
You got to take care of yourself. And it's because it's longevity. And that's something that I've had to learn a lot about too, is the boundaries and dealing with self-sabotage and dealing with making sure I'm getting what I need spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And that's a lot of what I talk about with coaching clients as well. It's a holistic approach. We can't focus just on getting you the job, because we can get you the job and great, now you have a job, but did we actually help you grow as a person?
There we are.
So
Sorry about that.
no, not a problem.
So last topic. We've talked a lot about depending on God and the Holy Spirit and having that walk with Him.
Hmm.
And you've mentioned a couple of times that you, after therapy, you've had therapy, and I have too. I've always had a therapist on speed dial. So the people in your life are so critical because they are the ones that are there to encourage. They're the ones that are there to help us if we do have a blind spot. Hey, let's think about that. Have you prayed about that? What we talked about before. I think one of the key things that we have to do to protect our career, to protect our job, to protect our family is have the right people speaking into our life and eliminating the wrong people from influence in our life. So talk about that, because that's a huge part of self-sabotage.
Yep, yep. And for me, that was a big work that I had to do, and ask Christ about is, are the people in my life, are they getting me in the direction of God's will, or are they pulling me away from it? Like it
Mm-hmm.
was a whole new experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people that I had to part ways with, I mean, gracefully.
Yeah.
And when even in technology, whatever career industry, whatever you're in, if you're going in the ministry, whatever it is, it's finding people that will speak life into you and also will call you out and let you know that you are living small or you're
Yeah.
not taking the steps in faith. And again, that's another thing. I would not be anywhere that I am without those people.
Yeah.
And so many times it was at times where I thought everything was good. I was comfortable even when I got into tech. And people would reach out to me and they say, hey, you're bigger than this. What you do is bigger than this. Don't stay here. Like,
Yeah.
I know you and your family are finally in a place where you're not struggling every single day, but you have so much more that you're capable of, and
Yeah.
that driving force. And then when I started my business, before I started it and prayed about it, not only that, I went and got discernment from other people, both that were, people of faith, but also people that were people of faith in tech. So I could
Yeah.
get both from them, the technical, the business side of things, but also from a godly perspective, so
Yeah.
that I knew when the time had come, it's time to go. And there was
Yeah.
no hesitation.
Yeah. I just think that's such an important point because the people that you allow to speak into your life, that's a huge honor. And that's a
Mhm.
huge, that in and of itself requires a very careful approach to that. And the same with yourself. If you get to speak into someone, when I coach someone, I understand how important that role is, and it's critical. And I think we have too many people and too many voices. I like to say right voices result in right choices,
Absolutely.
and wrong voices result in wrong choices. And so we have to be very careful, that our first voice is God, and our second voice are people that we've selected very, very
Very
carefully.
carefully.
That
Yes.
doesn't mean you got to kick everybody out of your life. I
No.
mean, there's people in your family that are not going to be good choices, but you don't have to
Yes.
go out and do what they say do. You can just kind of turn the volume down a little bit on that. But those, I think it's so important because you said counseling a couple of times, and
Yep.
counseling and coaching is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Well, I wish we could talk all day, but we won't because we'll have to come back and do this again. But
Yep.
I'm so excited that God has landed you where you are and that you've been able to help people from a business standpoint, and also coaching people who just need. It's so underestimated, the value of an encouragement and someone in your ear saying, "You can do this. You can do
Hmm.
this next thing,"
Hmm.
and you're doing that for so many people. So.
And you did that
Um,
for me, Beth, long, long ago. Whether you didn't even know it, but
no, I
that's
didn't.
the importance of living a life and
Yeah,
leaving a legacy and a godly one. Is you impacted me. Let's see, it's 8 years ago,
that's
and
amazing.
yeah,
That's amazing, and
yep,
that means so much. It's that kind of thing that just helps you keep going because you realize, okay, I am having some influence and effect, and it is really good to know that because a lot of times most people don't know, hey, you're doing great, but if you tell someone, you know what, you're doing great, then it feels really good. Or
yep,
it's just handing out encouragement is such an easy way to change a life really, really quickly.
absolutely,
And as coaches, that's a great thing that we get to do because, while we give real information and help people make solid decisions, they also need to know you got this because God's got you, and that's a big part of it.
absolutely,
Well,
absolutely.
Joseph, thank you so much for being here with me. I look forward to coming back and doing this again. You go take care of all your business and your wife and those babies, and have a great weekend. And we're definitely going to keep in touch. And the name of your business?
Joseph Loudon Consulting.
Joseph Loudon Consulting, and we're going to put that in the comments. So if anybody needs consulting, coaching, anything like that, they'll know how to reach out to you. So we'll make sure that resource is made available.
Sounds good. Absolutely.
All right. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Same to you. Thank y'all so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.